It was supposed to be just another night, another offhand remark tossed into the chaos of social media, another viral clip destined to flare up for a few hours and fade by morning. That's how these things usually go in the world of celebrity online drama: brief, bright, and ultimately forgettable. But that night, something snapped. Something deeper than the usual back and forth had shifted beneath the surface. What T.I. saw and heard that evening wasn't typical internet noise. It wasn't just clout-chasing chatter or exaggerated theatrics meant to get likes and retweets. According to people claiming proximity to the situation, it felt personal, targeted, and it struck at a nerve that had already been worn thin over time. Source of it all was Boosie Badazz, a figure known for being unapologetically blunt, raw, and often provocatively outspoken. A man who built his reputation on saying exactly what he thought, regardless of consequences. Usually that approach was predictable, controversial, yes, but also controlled chaos. Yet this time, insiders say, the reaction from T.I. wasn't just anger. It was something far more intense, a type of fury that even those closest to him had reportedly never witnessed. The tension, according to whispers circulating online, reached a level where logic seemed secondary to emotion, a point where escalation felt almost inevitable. And then the word began appearing in hushed tones across social media: fatal. Hours after Boosie publicly mocked T.I.'s son again, with what many described as humiliating, intentionally provocative content, things spilled out of the Instagram clips, tweets, and comment threads. The feud moved offline into private spaces: phone calls, whispered conversations, and tightly held meetings behind closed doors. Voices were raised. Interventions were attempted by friends and mutual acquaintances. Somewhere in that storm of heat and tension, insiders claim, a confrontation emerged, one that nearly spiraled into a fully violent encounter. Now the public is divided. Some dismiss the drama as exaggerated internet chaos. Others insist that buried under the noise lies a more serious reality. Celebrities who might typically comment remained unusually silent, heightening the sense that something significant had occurred. Across platforms, speculation surged. Leaked voice notes, second-hand accounts, and pieced-together theories suggested that the story was far larger than what anyone had seen online. So what really happened that night? Did T.I. lose control? Did Boosie cross a line that could never be uncrossed? And what exactly unfolded to make people whisper the chilling phrase, "He almost didn't make it out"? To answer these questions, the context is crucial. This wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow burn, a tension that had been building for years, layered and compounded over time. This wasn't just two rappers exchanging insults for clout. This was a history of small disagreements, subtle jabs, and diverging philosophies coming to a head. At the center were two powerful personalities, each commanding influence in the hip-hop world, but approaching fame, communication, and public perception in radically different ways. On one side, T.I., a veteran often calling himself a king, a man who has spent decades crafting an image rooted in authority, discipline, and evolution. His journey has taken him through music, business ventures, activism, and a carefully maintained public persona. On the other side, Boosie Badazz, unfiltered, unpredictable, and unwaveringly consistent in his refusal to play by conventional rules. His influence thrives on raw honesty, speaking freely regardless of public backlash, and cultivating a sense of authenticity that resonates with his following. For years, these differences didn't ignite conflict. In fact, the two coexisted in overlapping social and professional circles, occasionally sharing platforms and audiences. There was respect, however quiet, and interactions were largely civil. But over time, the contrasts became more pronounced. It began subtly. Public disagreements during interviews, podcasts, and Instagram lives where Boosie would challenge T.I.'s viewpoints. At first, this looked like standard debate, two outspoken figures clashing intellectually. But gradually, the tone shifted. The mutual respect that had underpinned early exchanges faded. Commentary became increasingly personal, not just critical but pointedly so. And then the attacks crossed into territory far closer to home, T.I.'s family, specifically his son, King Harris. King Harris has never shied away from attention. Over the years, his moments online, rebellious, controversial, or playful, have gone viral, drawing public attention and sparking discussion about how they relate to his father's carefully curated image. Social media amplifies these moments, turning private teenage missteps into public fodder for jokes, memes, and commentary. Boosie became one of the loud, voices in that ongoing narrative. Initially, it may have seemed like harmless teasing, typical of hip-hop culture's rough humor. But over time, those comments grew sharper, more direct, more pointedly cruel. According to sources close to T.I., the remarks crossed a threshold, a line between public discourse and personal attack. It was no longer about rivalry or commentary. It was about family. T.I., as insiders claim, initially tried to manage the situation privately, ignoring the comments, sending discreet messages, attempting behind-the-scenes mediation to prevent escalation. But these efforts reportedly failed. Boosie did not relent. He doubled down, continuing his commentary openly and deliberately drawing attention. One alleged insider described a private warning given to Boosie, an attempt to clarify the seriousness of the situation. According to that account, the warning was dismissed, laughed off, and treated lightly. That reaction, predictably, did not sit well. Soon after, Boosie returned publicly, this time with an intensified tone. He singled out King Harris directly, making statements that were clipped, shared, and spread within minutes across social media platforms. The public reaction was immediate and divided. Some audiences found it entertaining. Others agreed with his perspective. But for many, unease set in. It was no longer playful commentary or harmless jabs. It felt dangerously personal. The pressure on T.I. escalated. Fans flooded his comments, sending clips, tagging him repeatedly, pushing him to respond, to defend his son, to take a public stance. And T.I., known for protecting his family and reputation, does not take such provocations lightly. Behind the scenes, tension reportedly continued to mount. Heated discussions, attempts at mediation, a sense among those involved that the situation was inching toward something serious. One source described it as no longer rap beef. It had become personal, dangerous even. But despite the warnings and efforts, the escalation did not stop. Boosie made another move, delivering another comment, a jab sharper and more direct than anything before. It was mocking, aggressive, and entirely deliberate. According to those observing, the intensity was unlike anything previously seen in their exchanges. That push, intense, deliberate, and public, may have been the precise moment everything tipped over the edge. And from that point, the narrative changed entirely. What had begun as a series of social media exchanges transformed into a tense, multi-layered drama with implications far beyond Instagram clips. Reports circulated of nearly violent confrontations, of heated arguments that threatened to cross into physical territory. The phrase, "he almost didn't make it out," began to circulate, whispered among fans, insiders, and commentators alike, signaling the seriousness of the escalation. The story also reframed public perception. No longer was this merely a feud between two rappers for attention or clout. It was a deeply personal conflict involving family, legacy, and pride, magnified by social media's instant amplification. Every post, every clip, and every comment now carried stakes that could not be ignored. The situation became a case study in how private tensions can become public crises. Social media accelerated events, spreading information and speculation faster than anyone could verify. Friends and insiders attempted interventions, but the digital environment had already taken on a life of its own. Moments once private were now consumed, analyzed, and debated by millions. For T.I., the pressure was twofold: to defend his family and manage the fallout in a public arena that thrives on chaos. For Boosie, it was about maintaining authenticity, reinforcing his reputation for fearlessness, and speaking without restraint. But the combination of these forces created a volatile mix, one that insiders say nearly reached a breaking point. In the end, the night was defined by escalation, uncertainty, and tension so intense it felt almost tangible. What began as an offhand comment on social media evolved into a conflict that blurred the lines between personal and public, entertainment and danger, words and potential violence. The ripple effects were immediate: viral clips, leaked accounts, social media debates, and a heightened sense of unpredictability. That moment, the exact point when one comment tipped the balance, is now at the center of speculation, discussion, and debate. It was more than a feud, more than entertainment. It was a reminder of how quickly personal animosities can escalate when amplified by public platforms, and how even carefully managed reputations can be tested by social media's relentless scrutiny. In retrospect, it was a collision of personalities, influence, and emotion, a slow burn ignited into near catastrophe. And while some will dismiss it as internet theatrics, others insist the story carries weight far beyond what appears on screen. Because for those involved, that night was anything but ordinary. And for everyone watching, it became a cautionary tale of fame, family, and the unpredictable power of words in the digital age. Up until that night, everything had followed a familiar rhythm. Online jabs, viral clips, fans debating endlessly in comment sections. A drama that flares bright and intense but usually disappears just as quickly as it arrived. That was the usual cycle, the predictable rhythm of celebrity social media conflicts. But this time, according to multiple insider accounts, what happened next was different. It didn't follow the pattern. It wasn't planned. It wasn't calculated. And it certainly wasn't supposed to go as far as it did. Because once emotions took over, there was no controlling what came next. The escalation pushed the situation to a level of chaos that nobody, neither the participants nor those close to them, were prepared for. This confrontation wasn't just shocking, it was deeply unsettling. It was the moment when the story stopped being about words, opinions, and online bravado and started becoming something real, tangible, serious. Boosie Badazz may not have realized just how far he had pushed T.I. that night. The usual boundaries, the social media protocols, the invisible lines everyone had respected before, seemed to evaporate. This time, the reaction from T.I. was not typical. It was raw, direct, and immediate. The night in question appeared, on the surface, completely ordinary. No public warnings, no announcements, no visible tension hinting that anything was about to erupt. To outsiders, it was just another night in the endless cycle of celebrity online noise. But behind the scenes, everything was already reaching a boiling point. According to multiple reports, Boosie went live once again. At first, it seemed routine. Fans expected his usual, candid opinions, high-energy, unpredictable commentary. That was Boosie's brand: chaotic, unapologetic, unscripted. But this time, something shifted. The energy changed. The tone was no longer casual or spontaneous. It felt deliberate, targeted, intentional. Minutes into the live stream, clips began circulating online. Viewers initially reacted as they always did, laughing, sharing, reacting. Then he said it again. He brought up King Harris, not casually, not in passing, but with a tone that radiated mockery and provocation. Each phrase was repeated. Certain moments were drawn out. Laughter punctuated the remarks, but it was no longer humor. It was a challenge. And then came the line that, according to viewers, crossed a boundary. Within seconds, social media erupted. Comments flooded every platform. Notifications lit up everywhere. Fans began tagging T.I. repeatedly. "Yo, you seeing this? He wildin' now. This ain't funny anymore." The shift was immediate. from entertainment to concern, from amusement to alarm. And this time something changed. T.I. didn't stay silent, not this time. Sources claim that within minutes of the clips going viral, urgent calls were being made. Not casual check-ins or friendly inquiries. These were tense, high-pressure conversations charged with emotion. One insider described the energy in those calls as unlike anything they had heard before. You could hear it in his voice, they said, like he wasn't playing anymore. This wasn't about the internet. This was something else entirely. T.I. wanted to handle it face to face. And in the world of escalating celebrity drama, that phrase, face to face, is a warning in itself. Because once conflicts move offline beyond the controlled environment of social media, they enter something unpredictable, something real. A location was shared, quietly, privately, not posted online, not broadcasted, just passed to the right people. No cameras, no audience, no filters. Just a meeting. And according to multiple accounts, Boosie didn't ignore it. He didn't avoid the confrontation. He showed up. What happened next is where the story becomes complicated. Accounts are conflicting, messy, and in some cases, deeply unsettling. Some reports describe the meeting as an attempt to de-escalate, a chance to set boundaries, to talk it out, to prevent things from going further. But others tell a very different story. From the moment both arrived, the tension was palpable, a heaviness in the air, an unspoken warning that something could break at any moment. Voices were raised almost immediately. Body language turned aggressive. People who were present began trying to intervene early, sensing that the room could explode if not controlled. Because everyone there could feel it, this was not going to be a calm conversation. Logic and reason had little chance once emotions reached that level. One alleged witness described it bluntly. They weren't talking, they were arguing, loud, angry. It didn't feel like a conversation. It felt like something was about to go wrong. And then it did. The argument intensified, escalated. Faster than anyone expected. A comment was made. No one agrees on exactly what it was, but every version of the story shares a critical detail. It involved King Harris. And that's when everything snapped. T.I. lunged forward. No hesitation, no pause, pure reaction, fueled by anger that had been simmering for far too long. Chaos followed immediately. People rushed in. Voices overlapped, shouting over each other. Hands reached out, trying to separate the two before things escalated further. The room, according to those present, went from tense to explosive in an instant. For a few seconds, it felt as though everything might spiral into something far worse. One insider described it like this. It wasn't just a fight, it felt like he lost control. And then came the darker moment. Amid the chaos, someone shouted something that cut through everything. Chill, this ain't going there. That word there has since become central to speculation, because what exactly does there mean? The moment has no official record, no police reports, no confirmed mention of weapons, nothing concrete. But according to those claiming to have been present, the energy of that instant was enough to terrify everyone in the room. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was heavier, darker, something that could have crossed a line that could never be undone. Then, just as suddenly as it erupted, the situation began to be contained. People pulled T.I. back. Others stepped decisively between him and Boosie. Shouting gave way to controlled, tense voices, warnings, not reactions. Everyone realized the truth in that instant. This wasn't just rap beef, this was real. Boosie was escorted out. T.I. was held back. Both sides separated before anything irreversible could occur. But not before one final moment. One final look. According to a witness, it was the kind of look that said everything words could not. A silent exchange loaded with tension, anger, and unresolved conflict. A look heavy with meaning. impossible to ignore, and haunting in its intensity. That night, what had begun as the usual cycle of viral social media chaos transformed into a deeply personal, high-stakes confrontation. The shift from digital to real-life tension revealed the unpredictable nature of fame, ego, and emotion. One careless word, one provocative remark, had escalated far beyond what anyone could have anticipated. And while the incident ended without physical harm, the memory of those moments, charged, chaotic, and almost catastrophic, lingers. For T.I., Boosie, and everyone who witnessed it, the night became a cautionary tale about how quickly public drama can transform into real-life confrontation, how the amplification of social media can push emotions to dangerous extremes, how words once spoken can have consequences no one is prepared to face. That night was no longer just a story for fans to consume. It was a stark reminder. When personal pride, family, and reputation collide with the relentless amplification of the online world, chaos is never far behind. And once it erupts, there is no turning back. And just like that, it was over. Or at least it should have been. Because if that had truly been the end, this might have faded like all the other moments of viral celebrity drama. The kind that explodes for a few hours, makes headlines, and disappears by morning. But it didn't. Within hours, something leaked. Not video, not audio, messages. Alleged messages began circulating online, claiming to reveal what was said after the confrontation. No one could confirm their authenticity, but that didn't slow the spread. The internet doesn't wait for proof, it reacts. And one line in particular captured everyone's attention. Next time it won't stop. No context, no explanation, no confirmation, just that sentence. And just like that, the situation escalated again. Because now, the focus wasn't just on what happened that night, it was on what might happen next. Fans dissected every detail. Social media exploded with theories, accusations, and speculation. Some dismissed it as fake. Others believed it was a deliberate warning. Regardless of authenticity, one thing became clear: this was far from over. Instead of fading into the background like most online conflicts, the drama exploded, moving from private messages and whispers into the public eye in a way that was impossible to ignore. It wasn't just about the confrontation anymore. It was about potential consequences, uncertainty, and the looming question: what happens next? Within hours of those alleged messages leaking, the conversation went fully public, and when it did, it spread like wildfire. Social media didn't just react. It became a battlefield. Old clips resurfaced. Screenshots circulated. Rumors about voice notes, private calls, and behind-the-scenes threats flooded timelines all at once. Whispers became viral speculation. Insider talk became trending topics. And the names at the center, T.I. and Boosie Badazz, were everywhere. But what shocked people most was the third name now being pulled into the spotlight: King Harris. And this time it wasn't jokes, it wasn't debate, it was chaos. Fake leaked DMs began appearing across platforms, some so detailed they seemed real. One set allegedly showed T.I. warning Boosie to stay away from his family, drawing a line that should never be crossed. Another claimed to show Boosie brushing it off, laughing as if it were just another viral moment, another temporary headline. None of it was verified, none of it confirmed, but that didn't matter. On the internet, speculation spreads faster than facts, and people reacted immediately. One viral post, shared thousands of times in minutes, read, "He really thought it was sweet until it was." That single sentence changed the tone of the entire conversation. People weren't just asking what had happened. They were choosing sides. There was no neutral ground anymore, no middle path, just two camps forming in real time. Team T.I., Team Boosie. And the divide grew deeper by the minute. Then came the voice note rumors, unverified, unconfirmed, but omnipresent, Clips allegedly captured heated exchanges, raised voices, aggressive tones, words interpreted as threats. Some listeners insisted they were authentic. Others swore they were edited, manipulated, or outright fabricated. Proof didn't matter. Once something enters the ecosystem of social media, it develops a life of its own. The reactions intensified. Supporters of T.I. argued passionately. He warned him, "You can't keep disrespecting someone's kid and expect nothing to happen." Boosie's defenders fired back with equal fervor. "He's just speaking his mind. That's who he is. You can't control what people say." And then there were the ones caught in the middle, people who weren't laughing anymore. Because what had started as entertainment, as another viral drama, was now starting to feel unpredictable, real, dangerous. But it wasn't over, not by a long shot. Then came a claim that changed everything again. According to an alleged industry insider, the confrontation that everyone had been talking about wasn't the first. Let that sink in, not the first. The suggestion was that multiple private attempts had been made to resolve the situation long before it went public. Conversations behind closed doors, warnings delivered through mutual connections, tense meetings that never made headlines. If that's true, then this wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow burn, quietly escalating, layer by layer, until it finally became unavoidable. And then came another alleged leak, hitting even harder than before. It claimed that after the confrontation, discussions took place, again unconfirmed, about how to handle things differently if it happened again. And suddenly, that line, "Next time it won't stop," no longer seemed like dramatic flair. It didn't feel like a generic warning or a vague threat. People began interpreting it seriously, not as frustration, not as emotion, but as a direct warning, perhaps even a threat. And that's when the conversation took a darker turn. The questions shifted from the past to the future. Would this escalate further? Would there be another confrontation? And if so, would it end the same way or worse? Even celebrities began reacting, but carefully. No direct call-outs, no explicit statements, just subtle tweets, cryptic posts, messages that didn't name names but didn't need to. One artist wrote, "Some lines you just don't cross, especially when it's family." Another countered, "Y'all too emotional, it's words, not war." And just like that, the divide deepened. This was no longer just about two individuals. It had evolved into a conversation about boundaries, respect, freedom of speech, and the question everyone was asking but few dared to say aloud: how far is too far? Then a new clip surfaced, not from the confrontation, not from that night, but from earlier that same day. In it, Boosie appeared completely relaxed, laughing, unbothered, talking about the situation like it wasn't serious, like it wasn't about to spiral into something far bigger than anyone expected. And that clip changed everything. Now the narrative fractured again. Some interpreted it as recklessness. He didn't realize how serious it had become, they said. Others saw deliberate provocation. He knew exactly what he was doing. Was it careless or calculated underestimation or control? Most importantly, did he underestimate T.I.? According to some insiders, that's exactly what happened. He thought it was just internet talk, one claim suggested. He didn't think it would turn real like that. But it did. And now the consequences were unfolding in real time. Security reportedly increased around both sides. Public appearances became limited. Movements became quieter, more controlled, more private. Behind the scenes, the tension lingered. It didn't dissipate. It remained unresolved, because no apology had been made. No clarifying statements issued. Nothing had bridged the divide. And the internet continued to feed on every new leak, every rumor, every cryptic post. The drama had escaped the confines of social media, and now existed in a murky space where speculation, fear, and fact collided. It wasn't just a viral moment anymore. It was a warning A reminder of how quickly digital drama can spill into reality. A glimpse into how fragile the line is between online words and real-world consequences. Because once tension reaches this level, there's no reset button. The past confrontation might be over, but the implications are ongoing. The threats, the speculation, the fractured narrative, those live on. And the question haunting everyone watching now is simple, terrifying, and unresolved. What happens next? No official statements had clarified anything. No one had backed down. And when situations like that remain unresolved, they don't fade, they grow. That's exactly what was happening. Because just when people thought things might finally slow down, a new question began circulating across social media. What if that night wasn't the worst part? That question alone was enough to keep everyone locked in, watching, waiting, refreshing feeds compulsively, retweeting, reposting, tagging friends. Because if everything so far had been just the build-up, what came next might be something nobody was ready for. And the reactions, they only got louder. By the time things should have settled, they hadn't. They escalated. This wasn't a private feud anymore. It wasn't even just viral drama. It had turned into a full-scale cultural moment, the kind that pulls in everyone: fans, critics, bloggers, other artists, commentators. Once something reaches that level, the narrative no longer belongs to those involved. It becomes something bigger, something uncontrollable. Within hours, hashtags connected to both T.I. and Boosie dominated timelines. Clips resurfaced faster than anyone could track. Old interviews were dug up, past comments dissected like clues in a larger puzzle. People weren't just reacting to the present anymore, they were rewriting the past. Some dug up instances where Boosie had joked about other artists' families. Others highlighted clips of T.I. speaking about respect, discipline, and the lines that shouldn't be crossed. And that's when the debate truly exploded. On one side, supporters of T.I. were unwavering. You don't play with a man's child, period. He gave warnings. He tried to keep it private. At some point, words stopped being jokes. On the other side, just as loud, just as passionate. This is hip-hop, people talk. If you can't handle it, stay off the internet. Boosie's been the same forever. Why act surprised now? You can't threaten someone over words. And right in the middle of all this, one name kept getting pulled deeper into the storm: King Harris. While the internet argued, debated, and chose sides, he wasn't just part of the story anymore. He became the story. What started as a feud between T.I. and Boosie Badazz had transformed into something far more layered, far more uncomfortable. The spotlight shifted, and suddenly King Harris was no longer on the sidelines. He was at the center of a conversation he didn't fully control. Fans began analyzing every detail. Old videos resurfaced. Past statements were replayed, slowed down, dissected. His tone, his attitude, his public image, everything became material for debate. Moments once dismissed as teenage rebellion or viral social media clips were now being reframed as evidence in a larger narrative. And that's when things started to feel different. Because the conversation wasn't just about rap beef anymore, it became personal. People began asking questions that went beyond music, beyond celebrity culture. Questions that cut deeper. Was this about parenting? Was this about respect? Or was it about ego? And just like that, the internet fractured further. It wasn't just Team T.I. versus Team Boosie anymore. Now there were layers, debates about values, responsibility, boundaries, and the real consequences of public life. Meanwhile, inside the industry, something unusual happened: silence. At first, many artists chose to stay quiet. They watched from a distance, avoiding involvement. Situations like this are unpredictable, and in an industry built on relationships, choosing the wrong side can cost more than public opinion. It can cost connections, deals, reputations. But silence never lasts. Eventually, reactions started slipping through. Not direct statements, not clear callouts, subtle tweets, cryptic Instagram captions. Stories disappearing within hours, but not before screenshots preserved every word. One artist posted, "This ain't entertainment no more, this is real life." Another wrote, "Some people don't know when to stop until it's too late." And just like that, the tone shifted again. It wasn't just fans arguing anymore. It was people inside the Indus. Try quietly acknowledging that something had gone too far. But not everyone agreed. Some defended Boosie's right to speak freely. They argued that censorship, even social pressure, was a dangerous precedent. Hip-hop has always been a space for raw, unfiltered expression, they said. Others pushed back just as strongly. Freedom of speech, they argued, doesn't mean freedom from consequences. Words, especially when aimed at a family, carry weight, and sometimes that weight leads to real-world reactions. The debate quickly escalated. Podcasts dissected every move. YouTube channels broke down moments frame by frame. TikTok creators serialized the story timelines, hidden meanings, what really happened breakdowns. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had a version of the truth. And that's where it got complicated. Because for every leak there was a counter-leak. For every claim, a counterclaim. Somewhere in the middle, the actual truth became almost impossible to identify. The people at the center, they stayed mostly silent. No official statements, no explanations, no confirmations, just tension. And that silence didn't calm things down, it amplified them. Because when there's no clarity, people fill in the gaps themselves. Rumors start to feel like facts. Speculation looks like evidence. And before long, the story takes on a life of its own. Some began suggesting this wasn't just about one comment, one confrontation, one night. That it went deeper. That it was years of tension, unspoken issues, clashing personalities, unresolved disagreements quietly building behind the scenes. If that's true, then everything the public had seen so far was just the surface. One post, shared quietly but rapidly picked up, captured that feeling perfectly. "Y'all think it's over. This ain't even the worst part." The line spread fast. It raised a question nobody was ready to answer. If this isn't the worst part, then what is? What could possibly come next that's worse than everything that's already happened? That question kept people locked in, watching, waiting, refreshing feeds obsessively, because deep down there was a shared feeling. This wasn't finished, not even close. And just when people thought they had the story figured out, just when it seemed like everything had peaked, a new piece of information surfaced. This one didn't just add to the story, it changed it, it reframed it. Old video clips, once forgotten, began circulating again. Clips of Boosie laughing off previous tensions, making casual remarks that now seemed far more deliberate. Interviews with T.I., where he spoke about respect, responsibility, and boundaries, were replayed with a new lens. The conversation became less about entertainment and more about meaning, motive, and intent. The divide deepened. Team T.I. argued that lines had been crossed. Team Boosie countered that freedom of expression is part of the culture. And in the middle, King Harris was the unintended focal point of a debate about parenting, accountability, and the consequences of public life. And the broader audience, they weren't just watching anymore. They were speculating, predicting, analyzing. Every gesture, every word, every online move was now examined as if it were evidence in a larger narrative that no one fully understood. No one knew what would happen next. No one could predict the outcome. And in that uncertainty, the story grew. It thrived. It became something far beyond a simple feud. It had become a cultural event, a real-time reflection of social media, celebrity, family, and conflict, all colliding in a public arena with no clear rules. Because that's the nature of moments like this. Once a private conflict goes public, it is no longer private. Once tension becomes viral, it no longer belongs to the people at the center. It belongs to everyone watching. And right now, everyone was watching, waiting, refreshing, speculating. Because the worst, it might not even have happened yet. It flipped everything. According to a so-called insider claiming to have connections to both sides, what happened that night wasn't supposed to happen at all. Not like that. Not that intense. Not that dangerous. The meeting between T.I. and Boosie Badazz wasn't meant to be a confrontation. It wasn't supposed to explode. It was intended to be an intervention, a controlled attempt to resolve things privately, not a trap, not an ambush. Mutual connections, people respected by both sides, had reportedly worked behind the scenes to bring them together, aiming to clear the air, set boundaries, and prevent the situation from escalating any further. Both sides had agreed, reluctantly but willingly, to come to the meeting with that purpose in mind. Which means that night wasn't supposed to spiral out of control. So what went wrong? That's where the story takes a darker turn. According to the source, something happened just before the confrontation that hasn't been widely discussed. A message appeared, different from the leaked "next time it won't stop" line that later dominated social media. This was a separate message, allegedly shown only minutes before T.I. and Boosie came face to face. No one knows who sent it or what it said exactly, and no verified evidence exists. But the claim suggests that the moment it was seen, everything shifted. The tone changed. What was supposed to be a calm, measured conversation quickly transformed into confrontation. What had been controlled became chaotic. The energy in the room, the intentions of both sides, even the dynamic of those present, it all changed in an instant. And that's what has people unsettled. Because now the question isn't just what went wrong, it's why. Was this a simple misstep, a coincidence of timing and emotion? Or was it something more deliberate? The whispers have grown louder. What if someone wanted it to happen this way? What if the escalation wasn't accidental at all? There is no proof, no confirmation, just speculation. But the idea alone has fueled countless theories online. Rumors of a third party present that night began circulating. Unconfirmed, unverified, yet repeated enough that people started paying attention. Someone who hadn't been publicly named. Someone who may not have started the conflict but may have influenced its trajectory, pushing tensions at precisely the wrong moment. If even part of that is true, then the situation isn't just about T.I. and Boosie anymore. It's bigger, more complex, and far more dangerous. The implications don't stop there. According to the insider, after the chaos ended, after the shouting ceased and both sides departed, there was a quiet conversation behind closed doors. A line was allegedly spoken in that conversation that has since fueled endless speculation. This wasn't supposed to happen like this, but now it's too late. Too late for what? Too late to undo what had been done. Too late to contain the fallout. No one knows, and the ambiguity has only deepened the tension. The very phrase carries weight because it suggests that whatever unfolded was no longer reversible, that a point had been crossed from which the situation could not return to the controlled resolution everyone initially intended. And for King Harris, the stakes are even higher. Should he have been involved? Or is this simply the reality of growing up in the public eye, where private life is subject to public scrutiny, and personal moments can become viral narratives overnight? The story, at its core, raises real questions about the cost of visibility, the consequences of words, and the delicate line between a public persona and private life. Both sides had agreed to come together that night. Yet despite that agreement, everything spiraled out of control. That single shift, the message, the unknown influence, the tension, changed the course of events entirely. What was meant to be a conversation became confrontation. A controlled attempt at peace became a flashpoint for chaos, and now the story is far from over. If you've followed the events this far, you already understand that this isn't just another celebrity feud. This is an ongoing narrative, unfolding in real time, with layers of secrecy, speculation, and high stakes. And the next chapter, whatever form it takes, could redefine everything. So stay attentive, because whatever emerges next will demand scrutiny, analysis, and perhaps even a reevaluation of everything that has happened up to this point. Because the truth is clear, this story is far from finished, and when it does continue, the consequences may not be contained. The escalation, the tension, and the unresolved questions suggest that what we saw that night was only the beginning. The next moment, whatever it is, could be the one that changes everything.